listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. My name's Paul, and I'm an alcoholic. And I got a special guest for everyone today. This is our first episode. What is today's date? It's 12/16/2024. I should remember that. Tomorrow is my sobriety date, actually. Tonight I got Aaron H. from Nashville, Tennessee. How's it going, Aaron?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you. I was gonna give everybody a little bit of a backstory about how we met. My home group. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, or around the Nashville area, and met you, Aaron. It was interesting. You came and opened up our home group and led the meeting. Probably 3 months ago or something.
It's been a minute, 2 or 3, something like that.
Maybe a little bit longer than that. Yeah. And man, I loved your energy when you came, man. It was you got a real cool vibe, real great energy, man. I think the whole group loved it. Yeah. And I spoke to you that night about possibly getting you into doing something like this with us. And here we are, man. I really appreciate you joining us, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't have missed it, man. I appreciate you having me, for real.
Yeah, I was going to give everyone a little backstory about the podcast real quick too. So I started the YouTube page probably about somewhere around a year ago, and it's gotten great responses from people. So this is just a kind of a gift to that. Just appreciating everyone and their support, and all the comments people have been great. Really just it's reached a lot of people. We're getting a lot of good results from it, and it just seems like it's growing, so people are enjoying it. And this is that's kind of what spiraled this into existence. So here we are, and we have the next couple weeks. Next week, I think we have a guy named Randy M. from Los Angeles. He's going to be doing an episode with us, and then at the beginning of the year, we have Chris S. from New Jersey is going to be doing a 12-week series. He's going to do, I think we're going to do one a week, and it's going to be on an adequate presentation of the steps, a guide for sponsorship. Super stoked about that too. So yeah,
that'll be fun.
Yeah. So let's talk, Aaron. What's your you want to share a little bit, give us your sobriety date and talk to us about your experience, what brought you here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks again for having me. I didn't even know this was the first episode until a few minutes ago when you said it. Like, you may have told me that before, but I don't know. I feel honored to be on here. But yeah, I'm Aaron. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is 3/29/16. Very grateful for that date. On paper, it's the best day of my entire life, and I really mean that wholeheartedly. And a little bit kind of what happened was, I was an alcoholic from the start. Like, even before alcohol, like all the symptoms of alcoholism that, you hear about or read about, or anything indicative of kind of the alcoholic personality, I just had in spades. I never really felt a part of anything, didn't feel cool, didn't feel liked. I don't know, just was never comfortable, was actually probably the best way to put it. Never comfortable anywhere in the world, just kind of, for no real reason, you couldn't prove it in court, no proof of it, but just seemed, you know what I'm saying? It all in my head, but just it seemed kind of exclusive and unwelcoming and mildly hostile, and they definitely didn't like me. And anyway, I just kind of struggle with that. And you can't tell anyone that because you want to seem, like you have it together, cool, or not scared or whatever. So it's just kind of this, charade I kind of lived a little bit. But when I found alcohol, it was off to the races. First night I drank, I blacked out, came home from school sick the next day. And I started drinking every night I could from that date. And always seemed to, I'm a guy that I just always wound up in trouble. I know people that drink for 20 or 30 years and then something kind of bad happens and they are forced to take a look at it. There's nothing wrong with that, but that just wasn't my story. I was in trouble immediately and always, and it just, I couldn't get away from it. And I would try, things would get bad enough, I'd try to get sober, and I would just never get it. And it's funny, Paul, like one thing you said when I was out there giving the lead, I love your home group, by the way, man. It's,
Appreciate it,
I
man.
can't think of a time. Yeah, I'm for real. I can't think of a time I felt more welcome at a meeting. Like there may have been one over the years, but when I walked in, just everyone was just so genuinely kind and welcoming. But
Appreciate it,
I
man.
loved what you said. Yeah, no, you got it, man. But something you actually shared in that meeting when they opened it up, you said, I may not be quoting it exactly, but you go, I just need to try to figure out what God's will is for me, and then find out what's blocking me from doing that.
Amen.
And I was talking to my wife about it at lunch today because I knew we were doing this, and I'm real good at seeking God's will, but a lot of times it doesn't get done. And that's just kind of as far as, like, I know I'm supposed to apologize. But it's like, no, I'm not doing that right now. And a lot of times what's in my way, whether it's ego or fear or, thinking I know best. But I think that just whatever you want to call that kept me from getting sober for a long time, because I come into treatment. I wanted help. I agree I needed help. I knew drinking was killing me. And I sincerely wanted help as much as anyone you've ever met. But after 2 or 3 weeks or a month or two, I kind of thought I could pick and choose what kind of help I needed. I knew the people trying to help meant well, but they were missing the bigger picture. Maybe they suffered from a slightly lower IQ. They meant well, but I knew what I needed to really do, and I never got sober. And anyway, in this time, it wasn't even virtue. That was just beating out of me.
Let me ask you, where'd you grow up at? I'm just curious.
So I'm from Louisville, Kentucky originally. Okay. Just a little bit north of here. So,
nice.
Most
of your teenage years and stuff in Louisville.
Oh yeah. I moved down here in 2012. When I was, I was 28 I just turned 28. So my running and gunning and all that fun stuff was in Louisville. And I joke because in Nashville, I moved here in 2012. I didn't get sober until 16, but of those 4 years leading up, I was sober most of that time. 6 months go out for a week or two, 9 months go out for a week. So people in Nashville, they hear my stories, but they just have to trust it. Like they don't know the old Aaron, other than by hearing it. But anyway,
and was you in recovery? Like was you doing like 12-step programs during that process, or what? Like, what does that look like?
Well, I got sent to treatment the first time when I was 16, and then meetings, shortly followed that. So I was always introduced to it, like AA or rehab or whatever you want to call. But swear to God, I never understood that working the 12 steps was the program was the core of any 12-step program. I thought you were just kind of supposed to attend meetings and maybe not hang around with old people and just try real hard not to drink. Sure. And so I tried that, and every time I got drunk, I would just think it was, the program or something, I was just too bad to get it. But I never really, it wasn't until this last time I realized that I wasn't working any kind of a program. So, I'd been introduced, I guess to answer your question, I'd been introduced to the 12 steps. I just didn't, I wasn't taking them. It was like I was going to the gym for years, but doing everything except exercise. Yeah. Like I wore gym equipment. I drank the smoothies. Like I was there at 5 a.m. every morning, but it didn't work out.
That's funny, dude.
And Yeah, I thought I was just genetically predisposed to not being in shape when really I wasn't exercising.
Oh
So,
man,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
awesome,
yeah.
man. I've
But
never heard that
anyway,
analogy. It's funny. I get it. Trust me, I get it. Yeah,
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 it's the truth. It's the truth.
yeah. So what about like? Let me ask you
Um,
this though. So like, what was your experience though when you actually come in? You know, and after the what'd you say it was a few months or a few years? It was you said that like when you actually came in though. Like, so my experience with it was like, you know. I'd gotten sober at a recovery house scene, in my hometown where I'm living now. There's a bunch of recovery houses in around, which is great. It's there's a bunch of like within a 5 mile radius is like 10 recovery houses. So a lot of the meetings was a bunch of newer people.
oh
So
wow.
even when I came into AA, like like I was coming in and like sit down, but it was actually quite a while before I was in the same boat. Like it took me a while before I actually realized like, wow, hold on, there is a program of action. So what about you? Like when you come in, like was your first sponsor that after you came in and actually, found out there was a program of action, what that sponsorship look like with your first sponsor? Was that like?
Well, it was beautiful, man. It's kind of a longer story. I'll try to condense it, but I was in jail about like usual, and it was I'd been in there a whole bunch, and I kind of thought AA or any kind of program wouldn't work for me. And I remember when I got out, I was calling the people important to me and kind of saying my goodbyes without like saying goodbye, like and just thanking them for everything they did. And I
Yeah.
remember the guy had been working as a sponsor. He goes, "Why don't you come back to the program?" And I said, "Sam, man, I've lived that for years. It doesn't work." And he goes, "Have you ever worked all 12 steps?" And I remember I go, "Dog, that's a silly question." I was like, "You know how many times I've been in rehab or how many meetings I've been to and all?" And he goes, "That's cool. That's awesome." He goes, "That's not what I asked you though." He goes, "Have you ever worked all 12 steps wholeheartedly out of the book?" Every single word, withholding nothing, as if your life depended on it, with another man who has done all those same things before.
Wow.
And I got to thinking about it for the first time in my life. I thought, I was like, actually not. And he didn't even let me finish my sentence. He looked me square in the eye. He goes, "I guarantee if you do that, you won't drink anymore."
Wow.
Or he goes, "I guarantee if you do that, you'll stay sober."
Yeah.
And it was like some energy. I knew he was telling the truth, and I knew he was right. Like I can usually tell when people are either not being completely honest with me, or they have an axe to grind or something. Like this was just pure genuine love.
Yeah.
And I believed it, or I had a glimmer of hope that it might be true.
Mm.
Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I didn't rule it out.
Sure.
And so we started meeting. I was riding the bus, and he would have groups, book studies, doing the step work at his office at 7 a.m. downtown. And so I'd have to get on the bus at like 5:30 to connect and get down there. And we started at the front cover of the book, like not page one, not Roman numeral one, front cover.
Yeah.
We read all the way through it. We read the words. When it said write, we wrote. When it said pray, we prayed. When we said, any action, we did. And that's really how that looked. And it was kind of a no nonsense. It wasn't like extra strict for the sake of being strict, but it was just like, here's our assignment. We need to do this. And I did that, and I ain't had a drink since.
Well, nice.
So,
Nice. Heck yeah.
mhm.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Like it kind of goes back to, like what you were saying that I had mentioned that when you were at the home group, like you find, through the process when you do that, and it's weird too, man, because like the first and second time I went through the steps, I had cool experiences from them, but then like as the years progress, I'll have 8 years coming like tomorrow actually, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's been awesome. But like probably 4 or 5 years into it, when I actually got back into some step work, and I had some crazy experiences over the last few years. Every time I go through the steps, it's a cool experience, a brand new experience. But like I started seeing like like what we were talking about earlier, I didn't realize that these areas in my character, these parts of my personality were standing in the dang way. It's like, what would God have me be in this situation? If you don't understand that, you just don't understand. You don't have an experience with it, and that was vital for my recovery.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, it's so true. I swear to God, I always, every time I came in, tried to get sober, I thought like if I put my life together and or like I knew I needed to quit drinking, and then I would focus on like being a good guy and like being a good member of society. Like, let me get my life under control, stop drinking, and
Yeah.
then like I'll focus on other people. And it's weird. It's the opposite. If I just come in and I whatever, go by the rules at the halfway house, and I smile when I meet people, I treat people nice, I pay my debts, I don't steal, I'm at work on time. Like when I do those little things, every other area in my life just starts falling into place. Like
Man.
honest to God. Like
Amen. Yeah.
uh it's I don't know if you come in, like I'd come in, I'd have like court problems, and I had no money and no car, no license, and active warrants or whatever. And they're telling me the most mundane stuff. They're like, get to the meeting early and shake hands. I'm like, no, dog, like I need like 10 grand, like a good attorney, like a reliable, like you,
Yeah.
and I would almost shake my head. And I swear it's kind of a joke.
Yeah.
But if you've ever seen you ever seen the Karate Kid, the movie, like the original one?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, no, but for the dude goes to Miyagi. He's like, dude, I'm getting I'm getting beat up by this bully. Like, teach me karate. I heard you know karate. And he's like, yeah. He's like, you want to learn karate? Like, wax my cars. Wax them this way. And the dude goes, he's like, dog, I ain't trying to work for you. Like, I need to learn how to fight. And he goes, you want to learn how to fight? You wax the cars. And then he keeps coming back. Well, you want to paint the fence. He's like, no, dude, I need to learn how to fight. And finally, he's had enough. And he goes, you're going to teach me or not? Miyagi starts swinging on him, and all the motions he had been using to wax and paint sand were blocking all the punches. Like he was teaching him karate the whole time. And I swear to God, it's like the same thing with the program. I'll learn all this stuff. I'm like, this is not helping me. This is not what I need to do. And next thing you know, it's like I'm instinctively knowing how to navigate life.
It's crazy. It's like, you like each one of you slowly start to learn how to get the heck out of the way. It's like, wow. Okay. Self-will. It's like, man, and which is, it's funny too. Like I was talking to a friend of ours, we do my home group, we do like a book study once a month. And, we were talking about, like when I first come in, man, like the idea of God for me was like, it was a joke. Like people had been telling me growing up, give it to God, give it to God. But for me, it was I was so selfish, self-seeking. He didn't do what I wanted. So obviously I had to go get it or go do it, right? So it's crazy because like, the idea, so I had to come in and God, it was like through problems, it was like, he had to get a little bigger, then a little bigger, a little bigger. I learned how to, slowly get out of the way, and God would get bigger and bigger and bigger, at least my perception of him anyway. So, but we were talking about how, like, you get to a point where, like, after God gets big enough, then it's like, oh, now it's actually about me getting smaller. You know what I mean? It's like, holy crap, man. But, but it's interesting though, because if he's not big enough in the beginning, then that the idea of me getting smaller is just not going to happen. Does that make sense? That was just
right, right, yeah.
And so, how about you? Like, what was your relationship like with God? The ideas you had of God when you first come in. What that look like?
Well, it's I'm one of these guys. I always believed in God. Like I did, and it wasn't because like I was raised Catholic for a while until I started getting kicked out of school. It's like, but it wasn't. It had nothing to do with that. It's like I always just felt that like there must be something bigger than me, or like I didn't have a problem with whether or not God existed, but I didn't feel like he was interactive in human lives. Like I didn't think you could, if your car was black and you wanted it to be white and you couldn't afford a paint job, like you can't pray like for it to be white and wake up one day and it's white. Like that was my argument that God might exist. He just doesn't come down and manipulate reality. And one thing. It hit me one day, man, because I joke about it, but it's not really a joke. But like, I was in rehab or halfway house or jail or penitentiary in Twin Cities, Minnesota, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Atlanta, Georgia, Homewald, Tennessee, Burns, Tennessee, Dixon, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, Danville, Kentucky, LaGrange, Kentucky. In every single place, I was either in a meeting or, somebody brought a meeting in, and there's these people that would come in with their books and their highlighters, and they talk about, the steps changed their lives and God's working in their lives. Like everywhere I went,
Yeah.
and every time I'd be in the back of the room, just like, look at these idiots, or you know, or they're full of crap. And it hit me one day. I was like, either there's like this nationwide conspiracy organization, like, you know what I'm saying, whose objective is to, you know, falsely fool me that God exists. And you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
whatever city I'm in, they have operatives up there to fool me. You know what I'm saying? Like it's either that
Yeah.
or they were right and I just wasn't listening. And that's why I was in detox. And that's why I was in holding cells.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
and a
funny.
dude told me one time, yeah, I swear to God, and a dude just said, he goes, if you pretend God, even if you don't believe it, if you pretend God's real and you pretend that he will help you if you try to do his will, he goes, just pretend that's true. And I started acting, you know, like I was pretending, and my life started improving,
Yeah.
like in every area. And I don't mean
Yeah.
like a random check would up in the mailbox. You know, that's not the type of. It's just you know, there's that story that Bob D. He always tells in Vegas about the old lamplighters back in the day, like
Yeah,
before
yeah.
there was electricity.
Yeah, I remember
He goes,
that
they'd
story.
walk around and light the lamps at dusk, and he goes, if you stand up on a hill like overlooking the city. He goes, you can never see the lamplighter. He goes, but you can look at all the lamps that are lit and you can tell where he's been.
Amen.
And I never really saw God working, but every 6 months I could look back and things that should not have been worked out or were kind of irreconcilable, like all seemed to reconcile, all seemed to work out.
Yeah.
And after you have, you know, several, it's like something's got to be working.
Yeah.
So it's they start happening slowly but surely, and then you get a year or two or three sober, and now you got a Rolodex of those experiences, like where it's just like, damn, like. So that's kind of I basically just started out pretending, bro.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
But-
talking about when I was talking about how, you know, through those scenarios, you know, I used to call them problems. You know, in my first response used to always call them, they're not problems, they're situations, you know. But like that's what I meant. Like he would get bigger and get bigger and get bigger as like, you know, slowly getting out of the way, and all of a sudden, like God started getting bigger in my life. It's like, wow, you know. I heard a guy the other day, which reminded me, I'd forgot all about it. You know, he was talking about how like his idea of God was like, you know, that's some guy, you know, that you meet after death. You know, like I didn't realize that he's active right here in this life, right here in this moment. You know, it's like, wow, that was my experience. You know, it's like, okay, you know, you got to be good and this and this and. Which what we're really talking about is you know, agnostics. You know, it's like, you know, my sponsor, he has this definition of, you know, someone with a working, effective relationship with God. You know, that's a Gnostic. And an agnostic is someone, you know, without a working, effective relationship. And that's what we're talking about. It's like you come in, you slowly start getting out of the way, and all of a sudden things start happening. And it's like, holy crap, you know, like, you know.
Yeah. No, it's really wild, man. You know, I love that because it's like, well, what do they say? Like it's a program of subtraction rather than addition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for a long time I did it, and now I can see it like crystal clear in other people. But I don't want to talk about. I'll just talk about me. I didn't truly want to surrender or live by God's will. So I would try to whitewash it with a bunch of others, like a bunch of meetings, and, you know, make sure I read my book in the morning, not really living by principles like when it counted, you know, but just kind of trying to add all these things to make me better. And really it's just kind of like, quit lying, like quit holding on to grudges, like quit, just it was about letting go of the things that weren't me. And, you know, letting what really was me kind of exist.
Amen. Yeah.
But I love the picture of, you know, God growing. Like I really do, man. Like it's such a beautiful thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It was you know, it's all in we agnostics, how it talks about, you know, we'd found, you know, there's, you know, the fundamental idea of God, you know, it's talking about it was a part of our makeup, you know, and that's what you start seeing, you know, as you know, the going into the subtraction thing. It's like, you know, as you know, self starts to, you know, subtract, it's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on now. You know, it's really all manifestations of self. Charlie P. used to always talk about how the whole thing centers around this self piece. You know, I don't know if you've ever heard him talk about it. You know, he's, you know, it's like, you know, we searched out the flaws of our makeup, which caused our failures. Being convinced self manifested in its various forms is what defeated us. We considered its common manifestations, right? It's like, holy crap, you know. We start seeing how like all these different ways self manifests. That's, blocking this power, and
Mm-hmm.
it's crazy. Like Don P used to always talk about. He was like, man, when I was a kid, I started seeing at a pretty early age that my character defects had power. I was seeking power through my defects. It was like I could lie about being sick and not go to school. I could stay out of school all week. It's like, wow. We're always seeking some kind of power. It's crazy, man. And yeah. So
No, that is wild, man. It's. I'll tell you one of the. You know how you come, a newcomer or something. They come in and it's like, well, I don't know. I don't really say this to people, but you have to be like, you're the problem. Like, go look in the mirror and you see the problem. And all that. And don't, to a large extent, that's extremely true. It's just, but I don't want anyone to think I'm personally. I don't say that. But the point is, I would notice that a couple times I'd go to jail, and I was in there for a month a couple times on little 30-day bits, and every area of my life would improve while I was in there. Like I would get in better shape. My PO was happier. My parents were less upset with me. Like I was taking care, like just by like taking all my decisions and everything away, taking away the phone, taking away my decision, taking away my car, like everything improved just by me not being in it. Like I didn't even have to do anything. But it's I love what you said, man. It's a guy broke it down one time, kind of, this, you can call it restless, irritable, discontent. You can call it anything, like feeling it coming from behind, just alcoholism at work.
Sure.
That happens to me as a real little kid. And then I start seeking out things to make me happy. Like if I get money, or if I get this vehicle, if I get this bike, and I set out to get things to make me happy. And like the book talks, I'm stepping on people's toes. I'm being a little dishonest, this and that. And then I feel worse. Now I need more and more. And like alcohol and drugs is just like hydrocortisone and like poison ivy. Like, I mean, it just soothes the hell out of that.
Yeah.
And then when I come in, it looks like I got worldly problems, but really it's just, if I fix me, everything else snaps back into place.
Yeah. It's under bad management, right? We got bad management.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I get it, dude.
Yeah, it's wild.
So let's talk a little bit about what do you do as far as your daily disciplines, or what's your recovery life look like right now? What do what do your daily disciplines look like right now?
Yeah, so right now, it's not the tightest ship I've ever run. Just with kids and pregnant wife and all this stuff, but without negotiation, every morning I pray and I ask God to keep me sober that day. I ask him to show me if anybody needs to be helped. I always say, if there are any, chores you need done or errands you need run and don't have time to get to them, please let me know. I won't go to bed tonight until they're all checked off. And then when I get up, I usually try to be kind to the people in my family. That's a big one. I answer the calls. If my phone's ringing and I see it or hear it, I always answer it, no matter how inconvenient it is. Yeah. I do go to meetings. I have a service commitment twice a month out at a treatment center out in Burns, Tennessee.
Nice.
I sponsor. I sponsor quite a few guys at any given time. I'm usually actively sponsoring between 4 and 6. Nice. And then and then at night, of course, I do my prayers again. But that's pretty much what it looks like. And one thing I was exploring for a while, I was really trying to take meditation seriously, because there's a guy in Nashville. He jokes. Everyone, there was years when I called my sponsor, if I was all wound up, he would always ask me. He would say, "Do you have any amends that need to be made, and how much are you meditating?" Mm-hmm. And I was never meditating. And there's a guy in town. He goes. But long story short, I'll cut the theatrics, but he took to his sponsor. He goes, "I have a problem meditating. I just don't know how to meditate." And his sponsor goes, "How much are you meditating?" He goes, "Never." And he goes, "You don't have a problem with form. You have a problem with practice or something like that. Like the fact that, he just wasn't even trying." Yeah. So I've downloaded a couple apps. I don't even, there's a lot of good meditation apps, but I was doing that for a long time. And it really helped me. And I've been trying to listen more, in the book in 86 or 88, it talks about, I think we ask God in the morning what our, whatever to guide us. But then it says, we meditate, and then it says we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. So sometimes I usually pray and then meditate. That's what you hear. Prayer is talking to God, meditate is listening for the answers. But like that part, it actually talks, we meditate. Then after we get done, our head's clear. We ask God what we need to do. So that's something I've been trying to incorporate. But I heard a guy one time say, he goes, if somebody's got, and this is not a science, okay, this isn't a fact, this is, let's just say majority of the time it seems to be true. But he goes, when I meet somebody that's been through the steps and let's say has 2 years sober, he goes, when they go back out, he goes, it's either A, they usually withheld something on their fist up they didn't want to talk about. B, they're living there, they didn't complete all their amends. C, they're living in a way that's unspiritual. Whatever, stepping outside your marriage, cheating on your tax, whatever. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying. Yeah. He goes, and D, not giving it away. And one day he was talking, and he goes, I'll add a fifth one. He goes, not meditating regularly. He goes, it's rare that you meet someone that relapses that says I've meditated every day for the last 300 days. So I just thought that was kind of cool. But prayer, meetings, sponsorship, and honestly, I try to above everything else in my life, I try to be kind to other people. When I take care of God's kids, he just takes care of me. And I try to not make it transactional. Like, okay, God, I'm going to be, I'm going to loan him this, I'm going to help him get a car because you better bless me. Like, I don't do it like that. But anytime I'm trying to look out for God's kids, my life improves every single time. So, But anyway, how about you, man? What is your like? Yeah, it's true. The people are like, oh, I need more. No, you can't get a nickel out of I'm not giving you a ride. Like, look at them. Their lives are always horrible. They're always grouchy. They're always having relationships. They're always putting the passive-aggressive stuff on Facebook. It's funny when you need somebody, ain't nobody around to help.
It's like, all self. I know. Yeah. I get it. I can get there. If I'm not doing, the daily stuff, it's really, man, I can do the daily stuff and still get there easy, but like, it's, thank God for awareness, I tell you, man, like, especially the disciplines are huge. I'm in the same boat. I got a weekly service commitment. I go to a treatment center once a week. I sponsor, several guys. I'm usually active. Like, I got, service commitments in my home group. I have for me, it's always about, I don't know, I really enjoy taking guys through the steps, man. And I like having at least a couple guys at a time that I'm taking, new guys that I'm taking through the book. And I'd usually work the steps, I try to work the steps at least once a year. And even more than that, honestly, like, so, even when I'm taking guys, especially, doing daily inventory, I got a couple groups that I get a hold of. I stay, in contact. I got some nightly inventory groups that I have, like sponsees and then a sponsor. And we kind of send inventory back every night, back and forth on most nights. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's cool. And then, like, and also, like, a big one, man, was like, having an idea. Like, it's one of those things where, like, when I really started getting in touch with, like, these ideals, the book talks in the sexual misconduct, it talks about, in this way we shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. I take that to all the different areas of my life too, like when one of the first times I went out to eat with my sponsor, we were standing in line, like, we had to wait for a table, and he looked over at me, he was talking about my ideals, and I'd never even heard that, what do you mean my ideals? I thought he was talking about old ideas, Yeah. And this is, a couple years ago, and he was like, ideal. So, we started going through the work, and I started discovering, like, wow, like, what are my ideals? Like, I had no clue, like, I had no, for lack of a better word, like, standard on what I'm trying to aim towards,
Mm-hmm.
And, like, if I don't have that, it's kind of difficult. Like, it's kind of like, just getting tossed around in the wind, right? Like, oh, I don't know, I guess I'm supposed to be like this. But, like, there's something special about doing inventory on a regular basis for me, to where it's like, I see how, like, oh, okay, selfish, self-centered. I'm selfish, self-centered, self-seeking. That's the issue. It's getting in the way. And then what's even more important is not even necessarily seeing that. Is also, like, realizing that I don't have the sufficient power not to do that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
get what I mean? Like, that's the
I
huge
do.
part. It's like, man, I'm powerless. Like, I have to have some kind of help. And that's why, that's where I really start getting close to God, is like, man, realizing like, man, I'm getting in the way. I'm definitely going to screw this up. I'm going to turn this into something about me. I joke about it all the time, but like when I first, I read the book on a pretty regular basis, my first several years of sobriety, and it'd go to like the part in the book where it says, loving tolerance is our code, And I'd read that
Yeah,
part of the book, and I was like, all right, supposed to be more loving and tolerance. And I realized, like, man, I'm loving and tolerant till about 9 a.m.
yeah,
you know, on my power. It's like, man, it's so that's what I really started seeing through regular inventory, is finding out like just how much Paul gets in the way, and how much I need some kind of power greater than me, and that's really what the key to it is for me. And also what I started seeing like is, there's been times like even several years back, and probably first time I could think of it was like maybe 3 years sober, and then fast forward another 5 years sobriety, then like probably 6 months ago, something like that. I would go through like bouts of depression where I might have been depressed for like 2 or 3 weeks or maybe a month at a time,
mm,
and like looking back on it, like in the beginning I didn't even realize that was what was going on. It was like, oh, okay, like but the disciplines that I was doing on a regular basis, like what my feet were doing and had been doing for so long, literally carried me through those situations. It's like
hmm
my feelings didn't want to get up and go to a meeting or answer the phone for sponsees or, call my sponsor, share stuff with them or any of that. My feelings, if I would have allowed that to make my decisions for me, it'd have been a rough place, but thank God the daily disciplines were like literally carrying me through them situations. It was like, I just had to get up. There's that saying, they say recovery's in your feet, and that's huge, man. It's like, man,
yeah,
what am I doing each day, and
yeah,
yeah, so that's some of my favorite things to do is, I get into a lot of different literature too, certain Christian books, and I really got into meditation quite a bit for the first, after about 90 days in, I started getting pretty deep into meditation, but my step work was there was a lot of stuff in the steps that I wasn't doing at the time. And it was weird, like my meditation became like a self-seeking thing, it's like I'm trying to feel good and screw everybody else, and,
yeah,
and it's funny, man, like, alcoholism, so,
yeah,
so, man, it's cool to be able to just grow through experiences, and we're here, and I'm in the same boat with you as when it comes to like, man, like self-sacrifice, like helping God's children is really, really where it's at. It's what I start seeing on it more and more each day. It's like, man, that's what this whole thing's about.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, it really is, man.
it's crazy.
It really, they yeah, that thing, Dr. Bob, he was basically on his deathbed, and they went to him and they said, you're responsible for basically the, biggest spiritual movement of the 20th century. Like, if you have any kind of last words, what would it be? And he says, man, he goes, I think he said this program, but he goes, this program could be condensed down to 2 words, love and service.
Mm.
And, and there's a part in the literature where it says, each day, my friend's simple talk in our kitchen multiplies itself into a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill to men. Like nothing about drinking or not drinking, just kind of like get closer to God and help his kids. And just kind of as a byproduct, people's lives blossom like a dogwood, like in springtime. Like it's weird how that works, but I swear I forgot. I haven't thought about this in a long time. But the love and tolerance of others, is our code. Or I was living in a halfway house, and I bought a box of tea, and it had like 100 bags in it. And I remember I bought the box for $6. And one day I came home from work, and the box looked like it had been tampered with. I have no proof of that, but it looked like someone had been in there. And I was, and I'm going room to room looking for, tea leaves and cups and the tea bags in their trash can. And I was going to, at the house meeting, I'm not trying to like sound like cool or anything, but like I was going to confront the door we had, the meeting room we had the meeting in, I left it unlatched right before the meeting started because I was going to confront people. And if I got it out of somebody, I left the door unlatched. So I could like grab them and take them outside without having to open the door. And I called my sponsor in the bathroom right before because I knew I was about to get in big trouble. And I was like, I said, he answered the phone. I was like, "Hey, what are you doing? I need to talk to you." And he could like hear it in my voice, and I hear him like leaving the room he was in. He was like, "What's up, buddy? What's going on?" I was like, "I think somebody took some of my tea." And the line just went quiet, and he was like, "Why are you so upset about that?" And I was like, "Well, whoever does it doesn't respect me, and they must think I'm a joke, and we're about to." He goes, "No, I don't think that at all." He goes, "I think they probably did it in secret and like hope you don't find out, and I don't think it's what you're telling yourself." And I was like, "Well, that's not the point." Yeah. I was like, "Well, that's not the point." And he goes right there. He goes, "What's our code?" And I remember I was like, "Sam," I was like, "I don't have time for riddles." I was like, "I'm not in the mood." And he goes, "No." He goes, "Not." He goes, "I'm asking you, what's our code?" And love and tolerance of others is our code. It's not love and tolerance of others who deserve it, or love and tolerance of others who are loving and tolerant to us. It's period. Whether there's nothing I take to God where he says retaliate, hold a grudge, hang on to that anger, get them back. Nothing. It's always forgiveness and be kind. I'm like, if you vandalize my house, I'm going to call the police, but I'm going to do it lovingly. Like I'm not, but it's funny because I always thought sobriety was enough. Like if I like alcohol and drugs were bringing me down, like if I just got sober, then I have my wits about me. But there's almost nothing that's further from the truth, because sober, kind of unmedicated, I'm just operating on all these faulty systems. And I love what you said about the ideals part, because my sponsor was big on asking me. He goes, "How would God have you handle a situation, whatever it was?" And an ideal, it's kind of like a compass. Like it's like if I was stranded in the woods and I was like 100 miles from town, if you just came down with a compass and you're like, "Hey, if you go 5 degrees, north, whatever, you just keep walking, you'll hit it." Like, I'm still in the woods. I'm going to sleep in the rain that night. I might be hungry, but like, I know where I'm going. Like, it'll be, and that's kind of like what ideals look like. And, the last thing I was thinking, there's that letter on emotional sobriety, and Bill talks about, I think it was written when he had like 19 years sober, and I think it was published in like the Grapevine when he had like 22 or 24. But he was talking about all this depression, and he had worked the steps, and and he couldn't figure it out. And he made reference to the St. Francis prayer, and basically it's like a 2-page thing. It's one of the most profound things I've ever read in my entire life. But he said, happiness, he goes, if I examine every disturbance I have, great or small, he goes, I'll find at the root of it some unhealthy dependence on worldly things. I need someone to treat me right to be happy. I need to have this amount of money. I need you to be, thank me properly. I need some sort of validation and approval from worldly things. He goes, and that's not what it is at all. He goes, happiness and, whatever you want to call it, it's a byproduct of trying to give love. It's trying to do from others. And for real, if I get a big paycheck and go out to a nice dinner and buy some flashy stuff, like I feel empty after that. And but if I go to a meeting or sit down with a buck wild sponsee and listen to a 9-hour fifth step, or afterwards, I feel like I'm floating. Like I feel at peace. And I had that backwards for so long. It's giving that makes me happy, not take.
Amen. But, and it's funny you just touched on that, because about the St. Francis prayer, because that's pretty much like where my ideals go to. It's like, you get finished with a piece of inventory and you're like, oh, okay. It's like, oh, okay. I see. Obviously I shouldn't be this, or I shouldn't be that, I shouldn't be doing this, or I shouldn't be like this, but like, if you go to the St. Francis prayer, that's pretty much my ideals. It's like, to comfort rather than to be comforted, to love rather than to be loved, to be more understanding, less understood. It's like, man, when I can get into that space, it's like, going back to like what we were talking earlier was the comment you said I made at the meeting was, what's blocking that from taking place? And it's just, it goes back to that self piece. It's like the different ways self manifest, it's like, man, it's like, and it goes back to like what we were talking about with the We Agnostics. It's a part of our makeup. And as I went through the steps and I started seeing that stuff, it's like, wow, there's something else available to me other than this. It's, this. There's that one line in step 6 in the big book where it says, I'm probably going to botch it. It says something along the lines of like, we're now ready to let God remove all these things which we have admitted are objectionable. If I don't have an understanding on what's objectionable in my life, I'm probably going to keep doing it. I'm not probably. I'm probably going to keep doing it anyways. But if I don't have an understanding of it, like at least I know, if I have an understanding of it, it's like, oh, okay, man, this is keeps causing a whole lot of problems in my life, and all these people, I'm so sick of hurting people, and I start seeing it's objectionable.
Yeah.
It's like, holy crap, man. It's like, man, God, I need some help, and that's where it goes back to what I was talking about with doing inventory on a regular basis, where I start seeing like, man, I keep doing this stuff, like, how do I, that's where I really start seeing that I'm insufficient power. And it goes back to, lack of power was our dilemma, like we were talking about under bad management. It's like I had to tap into something bigger than me, actualizing that power. Like when we were talking about, like, there's actually a power that's available to us right here, right now. That's sufficient. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Man.
I do, man. Yeah, I love that. When I was going through the fears and the 4-step, I listed them, and there's the whole, we asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-sufficiency failed? It's like, in and of myself, there's nothing I can do. Like if I have a fear of like what you think about me, I can wear polo gear and I can get a fresh haircut. I can try to get a cool car. It doesn't fully solve the fear problem.
No.
And I remember one of my biggest fears. There was this meeting I used to go to years and years ago. And it was kind of, I don't mean this, but kind of the who's who of AA. A lot of people went there. They had a lot of time. They had nice vehicles. They had good jobs. They were married, all this stuff. And I was riding the bus there from a halfway house, making $8.25 an hour at Blue Coast Burrito. Like, and I just, it was I felt so bad in that room that the only thing I had to hang my hat on I tried to, I don't want to say bully people or intimidate them, but like I felt so intimidated that I tried to kind of be like that obnoxious kind. I don't know. I was just trying to be kind of like, don't mess with me type of guy, and I remember I told my sponsor, I said, that meeting's so cliquey and they don't care about the newcomer. He goes, no, Aaron. He goes, you take people's seats and you don't smile at anybody and you don't help. And he goes, be nice and clean up, smile at everybody, introduce yourself, stand in the handshake line, volunteer to, all. And he goes, do that for a month and see what happens. And I did that. And everyone they asked me to share, be one of the first, they invited me out to sushi. It was all me the whole time. Oh. And when I was going through the fears part, it was like that. It said, we asked ourselves why we had them. And anyway, it says, we asked God to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. And my fear was what other people thought about me. Man. And I said, God, remove my fear of what other people think about me and direct my attention to what you'd have me be. And he doesn't say ball out on these people. Try to act like the coolest guy in the room. Be a loudmouth, joke on people, make fun of people to make yourself. He didn't say any of that. Yeah. And he said, just be a good friend, be there for people, be humble, help out where you can. And I started living like that. And now I have more friends than I've ever had in my entire life. Nice. Like, it's just, but my mind tells me like, try to be cooler than them and and that just makes for a lonely life. Like I never understood, but, and you can go down the gambit with that. All my fears, like I was tackling them the wrong way, like for real.
It's crazy. And it's like we were using like these defects, like, like get to go back to what Don P was saying. It's like, we're seeking some kind of power, and it's just not effective. You start seeing it's objectionable, and it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's funny too, like how when you're working with a new guy, it takes a while before you can really start seeing this stuff. Like KDP, she talks about how, like, for this probably close to the first 3 or 4 years, you think it's about just abstinence from alcohol, and the truth is, it's like, no, I mean, I would say I was selfish, self-centered, self-seeking because I'd heard it in the meetings and I could see little glimpses of it, but I really didn't know and have like an understanding on how deep that actually goes, and like I had good teachers around me, when I say that, my grand sponsor and had all these other people around me that were great people and that was sharing their life with me, and they would talk about selfish, self-centered, self-seeking, that being the issue and all this, and I'd be, oh yeah, and I'd talk about it all fancy, but I didn't even have a clue. I'm often curious how often, like, I'm still unconsciously doing it, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really I was talking with my wife about something and it was funny. I forget what we were arguing about, and we were both positive we were right. And it hit me. It's like, this is like groundbreaking to think, but I usually think that 100% of everything I think is absolutely accurate. Like I'm never like, if I think you're being rude to me, like that's just a fact. Like if I think, and I love the part in the book where it talks about fancied or real. If
Yeah.
I'll be at a restaurant and a waiter doesn't seem to be giving me good service, and I'm like, is it my vernacular? Is he judging me? Like thinking he won't get a good tip? And then like that becomes just as real to me as if the waiter walked up, leaned over, and looked me right in my eye and said, I'm not going to give you good service because I think you're an idiot and you're not going to tip me well. Like how upset I would be if he actually said that to me. I am just that upset.
Amen.
Just in my head, toiling with this. That's why
funny.
it's important. Like, I can't base my life off of my thoughts. Like, things, anyway, it's just in that. But I'm telling you, like, people might listen to that and they'd be like, yeah, no kidding. Like, duh, but that never occurred to me that, like, I could think something that maybe not be true or maybe not be right.
I hear you.
Anyway,
And,
no, yeah,
and for
it's
me,
weird.
I tell you, man, that for me, that was like the vital, like my first sponsor that I had. Like if it wasn't for that relationship, like man, like he was, we used to call it like, being a sounding board with each other. Right? Like I would call him and I'd talk to him, and at the time he's 10 years sober. I'm just walking in and I'm scared to death, delusional, and the relationship I had with that man, like it taught me so much, man. Like even before I even started getting into a lot of the inventory stuff, I'd opened up and I'd started trusting him enough to where I started seeing how many old ideas I had getting in the way. It's like, holy crap, man, that's me. I mean, like ideas about God, he didn't care, he this and this and this, or I can't ask God to come into this situation, trust me, the church taught me this, so I was just keeping him out of all these areas, and he was like, how about we let God show you, just ask him for some help, and let's invite him into the situation. But I had all these old ideas that was just standing in the way the whole time, and
Yeah.
so that was vital, man. Like if it wasn't for that, I always tell, when I'm sharing with guys, like when I was new, man, I had so much stuff going, and even still today, like, I tend to share it, and also, I share it with people. And also that was one thing meditation has really done for me. I still have ideas obviously in my head, but today, through meditation, I'm able to like, take them or leave them, they don't have so much power over me, like in the beginning, every time a daggum thought crept in my mind, I had to follow it down a rabbit hole, and
Yeah.
meditation's really helped me with a lot of that stuff over the years. It's like, wow, okay, I'm not going to do that to myself today. Let me be good to myself, and it's crazy, man. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it really is, man. I was I have a childhood friend. I've known him since I was like 5, and he moved down here a few years ago, and we were having like a dinner party. I hate saying that word. It's not. It was just a party where we ordered food, But anyway, but the point is, a lot of our friends, maybe 8 or 10 of us there, and my childhood friend was there, and of course my wife. And I'm in the family room for a minute, and I walked into the kitchen, and everyone was in there. And my best friend from childhood, he looks at my wife. He goes, Rachel, he goes, can I get a slice of cake now? And she looks at him and bit it. She's like, Jesus Christ, Doug. She's like, do you want me to like sing you a song? Like, do you think it's your birthday? Like, get some cake, like for crying out, like no one can. And just like snapped on him, and like I was like mortified. And I'm like biting my tongue or whatever, what I'm saying, and I'm just like, how could she talk to my boy like that? And then I'm waiting, an hour or two later, everyone's leaving. I'm following them out the door one by one, and like the second that door closed, I looked at her and I was like, are you out of your mind? I was like, what are you doing? Like berating my boy? And she's like, no, Aaron, you missed the point. We were joking, having fun. I was like, no one was having fun. I was like, you were just rude to him, and I just really snapped off. And anyway, I was so hot that I took the dog out to walk the dog, and I decided like I just wanted some confirmation, like before I like really hammered the nail in, like when I got back, and I called my boy Doug, and I was like, yo, bro. I was like, what about Rachel talking to you? And Doug he loves delivering bad news. Like he's a guy that loves rubbing stuff in, and like, oh, like you understand what like that waitress was really horrible. He thrives on it.
Yeah.
And so I knew he was gonna, and I was like, you can tell me it's not gonna hurt my feelings. Frankly, I'm on your side. I was like, was Rachel just being an outrageously obnoxious person to you or what? And he goes, no, Aaron. He goes, we were joking about the dessert all night. I kept asking for a piece, and she was, fending it off. He's like, so I was just jokingly asking about a cake. That's why she fired. He's like, everyone got the joke, but you, because you weren't in the room. And like my heart just dropped. Like I would have bet every nickel I had that I was right. And anyway, and I had to go back in there and be like, yeah, baby, I actually misread that situation. You know what I'm saying? And it just, but the thing is, I have those all the time. A lot of times I don't have a Doug to call for confirmation. I just take it and run with whatever I think. But I have a knack for misinterpreting situations in a way where I feel slighted, just in throughout life. And so that's why it's good for me not to react on what I think just happened,
I hear you. Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, it goes back to those ideals. That's when a lot of times, whenever after I got like a good idea, when I went through the process and when I had a much better understanding of what those ideals are, it was important for me to stay close to them because I forget. Like when you get me in a knee-jerk reaction to life, man, like I'm not thinking about being more understanding and less understood. That's the last thing on me.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm hurt or threatened, I love how the big book says, uses those words, we found that, this areas we're either hurt or threatened. When I'm hurt or threatened, man, my knee-jerk reaction to stuff is usually defense. Not usually. For the most part, it's defense,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's crazy, man. Like, it's in. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I think we're about to wrap it up, man. I really appreciate you joining me tonight. This has really been awesome, man. I think it's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have missed it, man. No, I appreciate you having me, man. What a great not that I don't mean like we said a bunch of great stuff. I just mean I had a good time, and I'm glad we did it. You know what I'm saying? For real.
For sure, dude. Yeah, I appreciate you.
If I don't talk, I mean, congratulations on the up and coming 8 years, man. That is huge.
Thank you.
Would you say that's tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, in advance, man. I assume everything's going to work out between now and midnight. So, but if I don't talk to you tomorrow, congratulations on the big 8.
Cool. Appreciate it, Aaron. And I'll stay in touch with you, man.
All right. Sounds perfect. I hope so.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.